Okay. So my name is Isaac Abad, and I have my companion here.
Elizabeth Ellison. Nice to meet you. Liz.
So today we're going to be talking about Juan Corona. He was a serial killer, and that's the person I chose. So Juan Corona was accused of 25 counts of murder for first-degree murder. So, he was called a machete murderer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and his victims usually, they were the range of, I know they went up to, 67, but what was the youngest?
The youngest was 40, actually. So,
That's a really wide range for a serial killer, honestly, because
Yeah.
usually they have, a very specific type, especially when they have that many, killings.
Yeah, they had a bunch of he was all over the place. Most of them are all males. Actually, I think all of them were all males. You know, where he did his killing was on a peach orchard farm. So he would always find a way to bury the body or to hide the evidence in a way. But obviously that ended up not working out. So
Yeah, I wonder what when we talk about serial killers, it's always the biggest thing that I always think is the most interesting is how they got there and stuff like that, the
Right.
things that influence them throughout their lives, because a lot of that serial killer mapping you can either see in early childhood or it can be really affected by the scope of their life and how that affected them, like mental illness and stuff like that.
Yeah, his mental illness, he had I guess a schizophrenic episode, and he went to a hospital and he was there for he was actually diagnosed with schizophrenic. I guess he was schizo, and he had paranoid type. He actually received 23 shocks of treatment before being pronounced recovered. So probably didn't make it any better being shocked that many times,
No, actually there's a lot of what time period was his recovery? What time period? Was it the 70s, 60s?
It was about 50s. It was about 1956, and then he got released 3 months later. So
oh wow. So see, especially in the 1950s and stuff like that, shock therapy was seen as a fix-all for a lot of
Right.
things, and lobotomies were really really common for women as well,
Okay.
if you had the crazy wife syndrome, which is really just abuse. But let's not even that's not the conversation. But when it comes to shock therapy and stuff like that, it really actually does more damage than good, because it can get rid of a lot of emotional feelings and your ability to process things, and you gain a lot of inability because of shock therapy.
Right, and that makes sense. He was an immigrant though.
Okay.
He illegally immigrated here. So after he got released from the hospital, he was deported back to Mexico. Actually,
That's crazy. I'm gonna shock you over 30 times,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna send you back to Mexico. Figure it out.
So he came here to the United States in 1950. So going to the hospital 6 years later is a huge, huge difference.
Huge difference. And his killings didn't start till after the hospital visitation.
Yeah, actually, I think they did, but like I said, he was all over the place when it came to years. He didn't even his first killing was about February 25th. And there's not really a set date. There's just kind of
ranges because
of,
they don't really know, but it was around the 1970s.
Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much where he was at,
which means that it was well after his treatment, which probably means that a lot of that treatment had a really big impact on how he became a killer.
Right. Yeah.
And stuff like that. When was he born? Because that would tell us a lot about the age he was when he started killing and stuff like that.
He was born in February 7th, 1934. He was born in Mexico, and he lived up until March 4th, 2019. So pretty recently, he just passed away. He did have 4 children, and he also had a wife, Gloria I. Moreno, who got changed into Gloria I. Corona, and she lived from 1959 through 1974. We don't know the cause of death, so
what's really interesting about that actually is that 1974, around that time, is when he started his killings and stuff like that. So maybe the death of his wife played a very big part in that, especially after the shock therapy and stuff like that. He might have not been able to process it correctly, which led to maybe a mental snap and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was when he did come here, he was 16 at the time.
Wow.
So he was young. I don't think he came with anybody really, but I mean he was picking carrots and melons for about 3 months, and then he moved on to with his half brother Jose Navidad Corona Sanchez, who had immigrated to California in 1944 and worked in Marysville across the Feather River from Yuba City, and then he kind of just like, I guess they just parted ways. You know, once once after he got released, once Juan Corona got released and he was able to, you know, come back to Mexico, he was able to get a green card 6 years later. So like he was able to come back and he started working again, and now he was able to come back.
Yeah, he was established.
Yeah. So like but the thing is that when he came back, he had that record of being like schizophrenic and he had a violent temper, but he was like still regarded as like a hard worker.
Yeah, and you know, I know that we're probably going to talk about like his trial and stuff like that soon, but something that I had read a lot about when it came to him was his conspiracy theories. Was that like, because you mentioned his brother, and his brother was notoriously like in the conspiracy theories who people thought actually committed murders, because I know in his first trial, like, he didn't even defend himself, and there really wasn't even a defense. So.
Yeah, like, that first trial, he didn't even get a chance to go up there. He didn't go on the stand to really speak for himself in defense, and there was nobody else there to defend him. So, like, that, like, really just kind of, like, didn't give him a chance to, like, say anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like, I know that his half-brother was an open homophobic, so...
Yeah.
That's...
And wasn't his brother was openly homophobic, right?
Yeah.
And then was Juan openly gay? Like, was he out of the closet?
It didn't really say if he was out of the closet or not, but...
But I remember in a lot of the conspiracy theories, there was a lot of talk that he was a homosexual man, and that, like, that was something that played a really big part in why he was, like caught and stuff like that.
So maybe I guess another conspiracy was, or could be, is that, you know, Juan was maybe having sexual interaction with these men, and his half-brother didn't like it, so maybe his half-brother ended up killing them, and then blamed his half-brother Juan to really take all the blame of...
Yeah. Something else that was really interesting that I know about him is that only one of his victims was shot. Like, he was known as the machete murderer. And so, like, all of his victims were, like, stabbed and mutilated, like, with knives. But
he stirred away from his signature of always killing with you know, a machete or some type of knife.
Yeah, but it was for only one victim, and it wasn't even his first victim. Because normally with signatures and stuff like that, the first victim is the one that, like, would be different until they discover what is their method of killing. But this one was just, like, randomly placed, which is what makes, like, for me, when I look at it, makes the evidence almost look a little shaky, because it just doesn't match the psychology of serial killers.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that you know, it just, like I said, like, he maybe it could just be a conspiracy, you know, it's just a theory.
Yeah,
but
his second trial was more interesting. So tell me more about his second trial.
His second trial was more about, Juan was able to get more of a defense, in a sense. He was able to, you know, defend on his own. He got called up for 2 questions, and it only lasted like 2 minutes. And those 2 questions were, do you understand the state has accused you of killing 25 men? And he responded with yes, but he wasn't very, like, openly. He was kind of, like, nervous, you know, like, he didn't really want to, like, talk.
Yeah, it's reported as being, like, a very quiet yes.
Yeah, like, yeah. So then the guy that asked him said, did you have anything to do with killing those men? And he said no, but then after that, he really didn't get to talk after that. It was pretty much, that was it. And that trial only lasted 7 months, and he was again convicted for those, you know, those murders, and he didn't even get a chance for, like, parole. He had a life sentence, and some of the corrections officer were saying that after 7 years he could have a chance of parole because of like a rule, or like I guess like I'm not sure how to really say that, but they had like a rule in there, like in their books, saying that they could have that could happen, but obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, but I did find out that while he was in jail in the cell, he got stabbed 32 times for bumping into another inmate and not saying excuse me. So, like, that just kind of, like, blew my mind. Like,
yeah, that's, like, the most intense if he was the murderer, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's, like, a very intense form of karma.
Yeah.
Like, because he was known as a machete killer, so, like, it's honestly kind of fitting.
Yeah, because, like, I mean, getting stabbed 13 times. I mean, being able to survive that, like...
Oh, he survived it?
He survived it. And later on, he died on March 4th in 2019. He was 85, but he died from natural causes.
Wow.
So, being able to survive 32 stabs is just crazy,
That's insane. Wow, that's very interesting. He... for being such a like not super well known like serial killer, like obviously there's
like
lots
Ted Bundy,
there's lots of crazy famous serial killers, but like 25 victims is a substantial it's a substantial number. Like that's a lot of lives, and especially for like how wide his age range is, that's just like that's unique, I think, for like a serial killer. And I think he's got a very unique story, especially because like with immigration and stuff like that, especially with that time period, like you never know how much of it was genuinely like researched or genuinely studied. Like there's so much different like information that you could always find, and there's also so much information that's lost over time.
100%. I'm convinced that there's pieces that are missing that we don't know about, but maybe they haven't gone out to the public and say it, because he's already dead. Like
and his name's not everywhere in Netflix specials and stuff like that.
Like what happened had like really happened. That's
but I'd be really interested to see like more of his story.
Yeah, I feel like you don't see a lot of like Hispanic killers being like taught out there, or being like, you always see. I guess like a typology is like it's always like a middle-aged white male that are usually like the bigger like serial killers,
Yeah.
And I feel like you don't get to see where everybody stands, like how there's still serial killers happening like now, like we still haven't caught.
Yeah, especially in the U.S. we tend to have this idea sometimes that like serial killers and stuff like that are such a U.S. thing. It's such an American thing. You know what I'm saying?
Which is like not true. Like,
not true at all. You forget like that not only are there other serial killers in other countries, but those serial killers can come to the U.S. and they're still not an American serial killer.
Right.
Which is what makes his story so interesting, is that he is like...
He's he's from Mexico. He came here and he did his killings. He also was able to get his victims like fairly easily, because he was a contractor, so he was able to have people work for that farm or that ranch.
Yeah.
And so that was his job, was to get people to work for his boss. So like I felt like that was also easy for him to get his like victims.
Yeah, and to get to 25, like that means he had to have been getting away with it for like a substantial amount of time. Like, especially when you look at like the death dates of a lot of his killings. The death dates like range in like the lengths of like 5-6 years. I think because the range of the time of death of like all of his victims, and the fact that some of his victims don't have names.
Right, yeah. I think it's like 4 or 5 are
considered
John Doe.
Yeah, which means they're like unidentifiable, which means like there was such a gap, and like he went on spree killings, I think, and then like would like stop for a little bit and then would go on another spree. Yeah. But to get to 25, like that means he had to have been, he had to been paying attention a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Like I know his. They kind of found out they found like a freshly digged hole, and that's kind of like what gave it away. His boss was like walking through like the orchards, and they found like a freshly digged hole, and they kind of like started like connecting dots, and it got filled later on. Like it got filled the next day, so being able to like, I guess his boss was able to connect the dots in a sense, like, okay, something bad is happening here, like. So then I guess they brought the police out there. They found the dead body of the man, and seeing his signature of like the stabbings is what really like connected it all. Some witnesses would say that they would see that person go into his pickup truck or his car, and they would never see him again after that. Another piece of evidence is with that dead body that the owner of the orchard farm found was 2 pieces of a Bank of America checks with Juan Corona's name and address. So like being able to that's like
a damning piece of evidence.
Yeah, honestly. Like that's like a huge piece of evidence, or it could have been planted.
Yeah, because there's still a lot of talk about his brother and stuff like that, you know, which is very interesting.
Yeah, so like being like again like we don't know entirely of what if Juan you know committed the murders or if it was his half brother because you know it easily could have been planted. You know, maybe some fingerprints could have been planted there.
Yeah.
You know, and they found like some weapons in the back of his truck and his van. So, you know, I feel like with all of that being there, you know, that easily could have just been something for like a farm tool or something.
It's like it's evidence that could be like condemning, but it's also something that could be superficial.
Yeah.
Superficial, sorry. It's something that can definitely be placed. So it's a very interesting discussion, and I think that he's a very interesting serial killer. And I think there's a lot of rich history around that kind of stuff.
Oh, 100%. You know, like, again, like, you know, being able to, like, I guess, like, have that many bodies, you know, and I guess I don't want to say, like, take credit for it, but, like, I feel like every serial killer wants to get caught.
Yeah.
So I feel like at the same time, like, okay, yeah, his half brother could have planted the evidence, but what if Juan Corona wanted the checks there, you know, like there could be so much to that.
Or he got so far into his killings that he just assumed he would never get caught, because that happens a lot to serial killers. They get that mindscape of like, I'm unstoppable, I'm a god, like especially like once you take the life of like another human being, like that. I guess it has a lot of like chemical changes to the brain.
Yeah, like that just like I don't know, it just blows my mind, like I mean, especially because like you don't hear about it, you know, like I mean, I didn't even know who this person was until like I did my research.
Yeah.
So like, I guess like being able to see like there is like other races that are still doing it is like it's just crazy, you know.
Yeah, it's more of an eye opener than anything else.
Yeah, like it's definitely an eye opener for sure. Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, like his trial, they ended up finding him guilty, first degree murder, you know, 25 counts, no chance of parole, so he didn't really get a chance to do anything. He tried a second trial for it, didn't get that chance, and he ended up dying in prison. So I mean, that's kind of it. That's pretty much him.
Very interesting story, and it was very fun to like sit and talk about it and learn more. 100%. And I really appreciate you bringing me in and letting me learn more about this through your project.
You know, thank you for coming.
Of course.
Thank you for listening in.
Thank you.